This is James Kalm, and today we're coming to you from a neighborhood that has been coined by Stephen Maine as Smitlantic, coming to you from the Metaphor Contemporary Art Gallery, and we're going to pay a special visit, preview visit, to the exhibition Julian Jackson, A Life in Painting, 1927 to 2004.
Hey there.
And here's Julian Jackson.
Come on in.
Thanks. Okay, and we're talking with Julian Jackson here, and why don't you tell us a little bit about this show? I think there's a great human interest story besides the great art and the great painting here.
Well, Julian Jackson was my uncle, my father's brother, and of course for me, knowing that there was such a thing as artists living in New York was kind of a greatly liberating idea growing up in Virginia. That you could go off and pursue something as esoteric as art making in the big city was really very liberating, very encouraging idea for me. And he was always a very supportive guy. As I was a student, I stayed at his
You came up
studio on Union
and
Square.
visited him in New York? And
yeah, and he would take me around. He worked at the Guggenheim Museum. He was the archivist there for nearly 40 years. Basically built the archives.
all the way from just about the beginning of the whole operation there, huh?
Yeah. But he was also an active painter, and an important one during that period as well. Kind of hopping on all of the steamrollers that were moving along so quickly in art in those days.
Yeah, let's look at this. This is the earliest piece here, right here.
This is a piece from 1951. He had just finished a period of study with Hans Hofmann, and it sort of has this wonderful jungly energy about it. It's gestural, but a sort of controlled gesture, tightly compacted in this rather small painting, but with just tons of energy, and really looks like a youthful painting. It's called Rite of Spring.
This is actually the earliest piece.
This is a self-portrait. It was painted in about 1948, 47, when he was 17 or 18 years old.
I was going to say, every artist has got to do a bunch of self-portraits at some point.
Yeah. And what's interesting about this is the painting, which he's just finished working on. There are various interpretations whether this is a brush or a flower, but I think it's a brush. And this painting has this wonderful sort of receding series of planes, which just seem to lead right into his interests throughout his life. In figure ground and overlapping spaces.
And you've kind of got the show laid out chronologically, so we've got the early paintings on one wall, and then we sort of move up to some of the, I guess we've got the 50s on the other wall.
Yeah, this is from also the late 40s, early 50s.
Now, he came to New York, and you said that he studied with Hans Hofmann?
Studied with Hans Hofmann in Provincetown in 1951-52, that summer, and then he moved to New York. And this was the paintings on this wall. These are from the 50s. He exhibited as part of the 10th Street cooperative scene. These were paintings that he showed on 10th Street, and they're roughly from 1956, 57, and they obviously show the influence of Bakunin and who was so important.
Tworkov and some other people there.
Yeah,
kind of post-cubism.
Yeah, there's always an interest in overlapping planes. That's just a constant through his work.
And he lived in the neighborhood as well, too.
He lived on Rivington Street around this time, down the Lower East Side. And he lived in the Lower East Side his whole working life. And his last studio was on Forsyth in Delancey.
He was a downtowner when he was here in New York.
He was a downtowner, but he had a Virginian soul, and a lot of his work comes from engagement with the landscape of the Outer Banks of North Carolina, the mountains of Virginia. This one's called Sea Change, and this is a very much a landscape-inflected piece.
And these two pieces are almost like a triptych here.
Yeah, they have a relationship. He's always interested in some stacked forms of the city, and I think that these paintings reflect his engagement with urban subject matter.
Well, you can see how his planes are beginning to become more stark. He's really sort of getting into the geometrical layouts more.
Yeah, and that, it's like in an area like this, in this painting, especially like right in here, you know, where he takes a rectangle within the bigger rectangle and starts to divide it up. That really points the way.
You can also see that he's got a very astute color sense here that really comes out in some of the work in the 70s.
Yeah, it's very subtle. This group of paintings were shown at the Kalm Gallery in 1964 in an exhibition that included Frank Stella, Robert Ryman, Larry Coons, Saul LeWitt, and Dan Flavin, and
sort of
others.
a beginning of the post-painterly abstractionist, sort of
Exactly.
going towards minimalism and the more austere
And
abstraction. Is this designed as a set of paintings, or are these individual paintings that
the
are?
way he showed them originally was in a straight line, horizontal line, almost touching, like these are. I arranged them like this because throughout his career he worked on very small 4x6 inch drawing books, as he called them, and he arranged the pages like this. He would develop ideas on these pages and then later turn them into paintings. But I've got hundreds of pages of drawings that are set up just in this way, in this sort of 3/3 grid. I just was going through these books recently and found a set of sketches that led up to this painting. And you see him sort of working with variations on this until he comes up with this like sort of perfectly balanced and hieratic composition.
Let's look at some of the paintings from these are from the 70s?
The River series.
Now these are the ones that his color sense really comes out on. I enjoy these so much. It's such eye-catching colors, and his use of the harmonies and the tonalities and the subtleties of the various shades are really great.
I think in these pieces he was really responding to the kind of energy of the 70s, the sort of optimism and the energy of the late 60s, early 70s. These kind of sort of the most pop work that he ever made. But they're named after the Virginia rivers, which have wonderful names like Chillicothe and Moratico and Pamunkey.
The Pamunkey?
The Pamunkey is a very muddy river. And Chickahominy, you know, there are about 20 of these paintings, and they're just highly keyed and very interesting. They have this sort of zigzag that feels almost like a riverbank, or just the cut in the landscape.
Yeah, it could be a riverbank at sunset, looking at the sort of the color of the sky being reflected off the water with a kind of the wedge of a ridge in the background. And we have more work upstairs.
Yes, upstairs.
Let's take a run up the ladders.
From the 80s and 90s and on until the end of his life.
And he's gone back to his diamond or his lozenge format
He
here.
goes back to the lozenge after exploring the square for a decade. And in this group of work, there are sort of several themes. They're strictly formal themes, as in this piece, red over green, and then there are other pieces that are dealing more with his sense of spirituality. And this one is, he did a lot of studies. It's been written about him that he would look through chain link fences and see views of the city. And this painting is called Manhattan, and I think it sort of captures that feeling of looking at these great vertical sort of spires through the diamond.
I'm very glad that you've had a chance to give us a little tour here, and congratulations. I think the show is great, and
Thank you.
And I'm sure that Ward would have appreciated having his nephew come here and give him a chance to show the work to a new generation of artists in New York.
Well, it's a labor of love. It's sort of an act of resurrection, and it's the retrospective he never had.
This is James Kalm, reporting on the Ward Jackson A Life in Painting show from Metaphor Contemporary Art on Atlantic Avenue in downtown Brooklyn. Thanks, Kate.